Good morning and welcome to City Hall. We'll get started with the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Rick Belichick is the pastor at Britain Baptist Church. He will lead us in the invocation. Afterwards, I'll ask Councilman Skip Kelly to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Would everyone please stand?
Let us pray. Dear Father in heaven, we come before you this morning at the start of the day, asking for your divine guidance and leadance, Father, just as you guide us through the Holy Bible and teaching us to trust in you in all our ways, to acknowledge you in our lives, and follow the paths that you give us. I pray that this session will be guided by your Holy Spirit, and each and every one here participating will know that you are the Lord of this land, and as we turn to you for that direction, we pray again for your divine leadership. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Asking Councilwoman Salyer to join me down here up front. Each 6 months, a council member serves as the vice mayor, and Councilwoman Salyer served admirably for a 6-month period. I want to have you this in my appreciation of your great work. And when I can't be someplace, people are very glad because it meant Councilwoman Salyer got to be there and did a much better job than I ever would have. So thank you very much for your service.
I appreciate it. I enjoyed it so much.
You bet.
Lots of people coming into town. It was really a treat. So thanks so much.
You bet. Let's show our appreciation. We also have a resolution this morning. Wes Self has been named the Rotary Club of Oklahoma City's Teacher of the Month. He's also here with his principal, Desiree Whitmer. Y'all want to come forward? We have a resolution. I'll ask the clerk to read it.
Whereas Wes Self has been named Teacher of the Month by the Rotary Club of Oklahoma City for April 2012. Wes Self is an 8th grade teacher at Summit Middle School. Whereas Wes Self has taught math for 13 years and coached football for Edmond Public Schools for 17 years. Whereas Wes Self was recognized as Summit Middle School's Teacher of the Year for the 2007-2008 school year. And Wes Self serves as site team leader on several district math committees, including curriculum development and textbook adoption. Whereas Wes Self has been trained by the OEA as a mentor teacher in an effort to provide new teachers the resources needed to be successful during their first year of teaching. Whereas Wes Self initiated and chaired Summit's first annual Pi Day, a celebration of math, an activity that continues today. Whereas Wes Self has been instrumental in the implementation of Math RTI, a student remediation program, as well as the annual OCCT Math Boot Camp. Whereas Wes Self is an outstanding member of the Summit family and an excellent teacher who makes a difference in our world. Whereas Wes Self has been married to his wife Christy for 28 years, and they have 2 daughters, Kaylee and Logan. Now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and Council of the City of Oklahoma City that they do hereby recognize and commend Wes Self on his selection as April 2012 Teacher of the Month by the Rotary Club of Oklahoma City.
And Wes, now's the time of anticipation. We need a motion and a second. We vote on this. Okay. If you'll cast your eyes up there, you'll see that they're all green. Let's show our appreciation for our Teacher of the Month. Thank you very much.
I just want to thank the council very much for recognizing education and all the work you guys do for our city. Thank you.
You bet. And Summit is in the Edmond Public School System. There are 5 schools in the Edmond Public School System that are in Oklahoma City. We appreciate your work. Thanks for helping our kids. You bet. Thanks for coming down, too. You bet. Let's show appreciation one more time. And Each year, we try to honor our state champion sports teams and academic teams that reside in Oklahoma City, and these guys are making their annual appearance. I'll ask the Douglas High School Trojans to come forward. Come on up, boys. All right, we have a resolution. Let's the clerk to read it as we get settled.
Whereas the student athletes at Douglas High School demonstrate their winning attitude on and off the court, serving as ambassadors for their school and the city of Oklahoma City. Whereas Douglas has been a dominating force in high school basketball over the past 3 years. Whereas Douglas lost only 3 games to Oklahoma teams since the 2009-10 state tournament. Whereas during this tournament round, Douglas won its first game by 62 points and its second round game by 43 points. Whereas Douglas defeated Anadarko 86-53 to win its 3rd straight 4A boys basketball state championship. Now therefore be it resolved by the mayor and council of the city of Oklahoma City that they do hereby commend and congratulate Douglas High School on winning the 2011-2012 Class 4A boys basketball state championship.
All right, and once again, we have to have a vote to see if the council wants to approve this resolution. So we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. How about that? Let's show our appreciation. Hold on, Terry. You want to say anything about these young men?
First, let me say thank you, Mayor, for having us, council. The special thing about these young men, we've mentioned 3 in a row, but there's only 1 starter back from the team. None of these guys had any varsity experience. To the credit of this great man who coached them in junior varsity, other coaches couldn't be here from freshman basketball. They matured throughout the season, worked extremely hard, and we've heard all these things about, of course, Stephen Clark, young man on the end in the white suit, who was a tremendous basketball player. But without all these young men, including the coaching staff, none of this would have been possible. They worked extremely hard, and they made teams look bad. Those teams were really, really good. We spent hours and hours of scouting and watching film. And to the credit of these young men, their hard work and dedication, and with the support of our great principal, Dr. Staples, we were able to accomplish what we accomplished. Thank you.
Terry, we appreciate you very much. You're a coach, and you bet. Winning one state championship is a career for a lot of basketball coaches, and to do it back to back to back. Yeah, you're making up for lost time. And Stephen, congratulations on helping to lead this team forward. I've watched the state championship on television. You're an amazing player, and I love the way you dish off and these guys, and it was a team effort like I'd never seen in a state finals. 86-53, yeah, at the finals. That's a pretty good victory. Let's show our congratulations and appreciation to this team. Thanks very much. You bet. Thank you. Congratulations. Congratulations. Way to go. Way to go. How many here are going to be back next year? 7 of you back next year? All right. Congratulations. Randy, did you get all the pictures you needed? Okay. Thank you, guys. You guys get back to school now. All right? You bet, Terry. Games in the state tournament, and I think their total victory margin was like 100 points. Yeah, that is something. We're on item 4 of the council agenda. Item 4A is to receive the Journal of Council Proceedings for April 17th, and item 4B is to approve the Journal of Council Proceedings for April 10th. All right, comments or questions on the journal? Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 5 is a request for uncontested continuances.
Mayor, outside of item 8A, which is listed, which is a cell tower in Ward 7 that's continued until July 17th, I've got a few others on page 9 under dilapidated. Under item 8D1, item C, 610 North Douglas, we ask that that be stricken. The owner secured. And item E, 2112 North Kelly, we ask that that be stricken. The owner secured. Actually, these are unsecured. On page 10, item I, 1101 Northwest 11th Street, we ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item L, 1304 Northeast 14th, we ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item O, 220 Southwest 22nd Street, we ask that that be stricken. The owner secured. Item U, 1025 Southwest 33rd Street, we ask that that be stricken. The owner is secured. And item Y, 2148 Southwest 60th Street, we ask that that be stricken. Again, the owner has secured. And then on page 11, under claims for denial, item 8H1C. 8H1C, the claim for Sean Conrad. The Minister Counselor's Office has asked that that be deferred until May 15th.
All right, any other requests for uncontested continuances? Well, let's move on to the consent docket. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions on the consent docket?
Your Honor, may I just mention something? Item number W, the widening of Western Avenue.
All right.
And Mayor, if I could mention 6L and also 6X.
And E and AC.
Okay, David, you want to get us started with W?
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Just a comment, for those who are familiar with South Oklahoma City and the widening of Western Avenue, if you go back into the details, you'll notice this project first began in 1987. So, 25 years later, we're actually going to widen it, and it's a common question I get when I attend homeowners association meetings as to whether or not we really are going to widen Western. But this helps us to, demonstrate that we are on track. The city of Norman, combined with Cleveland County, are working from the south part, beginning already the construction and widening of Western from Norman heading north, and we hope to meet with them soon. So that's all, Your Honor. Thank you.
Like the Transcontinental Railroad.
Yes, sir.
Moving
Right.
forward to meet up. All
I
right.
think it's going to have tremendous impact on the continued development. It's going to serve as a very important link between Oklahoma City, Moore, and Norman. And what I also think will happen is, as we've seen commercial development continue to follow Western Avenue down to 134th, it's just going to continue now all the way to Norman, and I think actually pull the development from the city of Moore back into the Oklahoma City boundaries along Western Avenue. So I'm very pleased to see the progress on this project. Thank you.
All right. Meg?
Thank you, Mayor. I just, on item 6L, this is a resolution that terminates a contract for consulting services as part of the Plan OKC, and I just wondered, Russell, if we owed them any money, if there was a cost involved here, if we...
We had already committed $20,000 on this contract, but the balance is going to be added to one of our other consultancies who will be able to perform the work.
Right.
I think with the work that we can do, that we're not going to lose anything in terms of the performance out of this.
Perfect. So we'll pay them a portion of...
Yeah, we'll
what
pay
they
them
earn.
for the work done so far, but it wasn't to our satisfaction.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
All right.
And then item 6X, I just wanted to, bring it to the attention of our viewers in particular, and thank the staff for working with the taxi community. It sounds like we've come to a really good resolution in providing additional taxi stands between West Main and Sheridan on North Robinson.
Yeah, no, it's a dynamic process. I assume we will have more of these that'll come forth as changes occur.
Great. Well, thank you for listening to their concerns and seeing if we could address it while all this construction's going on downtown. Thank you.
All right, Ed?
I think I understand E. This is the annual contract. This is all Microsoft software purchases for the whole year, not just from February to the end of the year.
Hi, I'm Amy Simpson, the city's purchasing agent. Yes, that's our annual estimate, because sometimes on state contracts, we have to bring it back to council as the state's working on a contract each time. So we like to put the annual amount, so we're not spending that in that short amount of time. That's for a whole year.
So is it up to 850,000 or it's?
Yes, I think it was around 825, but we tried to include a little bit in case our costs go up.
Okay, thank you.
And AC, Ed?
This is an RFP for recycling. I want to just ask, just as a side note before we get into I don't know if anybody's listened to it, when you call the city and you get the answering the message about being an everyday environmentalist, which is a really great message. We'll have some messages on there that are pretty stern about styrofoam, about that it lasts forever, how bad for the environment it is. That's the message we're sending out to the public. In all of our city buildings, though, we use styrofoam. And I would just wonder, just as a policy question, would there be objections, or can anybody think of an objection from council of not using styrofoam in city buildings?
We'd be happy to look at that. I see 1, 2, 3. 4. Yeah, I think your point's made, sir.
Okay. Well, just for consistency and message, but it would also help. I think and my understanding is we recycle the paper, correct?
We have for years recycled paper. We've got a gap in the contract at this point in time, and so this is a contract that will do paper and things beyond that. Jennifer?
Yeah, I'm Jennifer Gooden, Sustainability Director. We do have mixed office paper picked up at the downtown campus and at several of the other main locations. The purpose of this contract is to get a vendor that can recycle a lot of the commonly recyclable materials. Paper is one of the more profitable, and so if a single vendor's picking up paper, it's harder to find a vendor who will come by and pick up the things that are less profitable to sell on the market. So we'd like to get one vendor who can pick all those up and consolidate our recycling programs.
Can you think of any other changes besides styrofoam that would help?
The styrofoam piece, we did not address in this recycling contract, at least by name, because it didn't come up as one of the common categories of waste, and because to my knowledge there's only one source where you can recycle styrofoam in Oklahoma City, and that's at Goodwill. However, I think we could include it because we asked for a waste audit to look at the waste that goes into our dumpsters and see what's making up by percentage of recyclables or paper or organic waste, for example. And if we found that styrofoam, for example, in shipping containers or shipping packaging included a significant portion of the waste, we could then introduce it into the materials that we'd like to have recycled. As far as purchasing styrofoam in city facilities would go, I'd be glad to do some research to see what has happened elsewhere on that. And we may want to address that on the procurement side, in addition to the recycling side.
How much bottled water do you think we use in the city?
I don't know. I can do some research and find out.
We've looked at that in the past, and it's not a great amount.
Not very much.
Ms. Gooden, with respect to that, could you look into the possibility of increasing the recycle bins for water bottles at our city parks, especially around walking trails?
Yes, we can look
I know there's some issues currently about who would be responsible for picking those up, but I do think it's an opportunity to enhance our recycling program because so many people these days do take water bottles to the tracks.
Okay, yes, we'll look into that too.
Any other comments about the consent docket? We have a motion and a second. Let's vote then. It passes unanimously. On to the concurrence docket. Any comments or questions here? Sounds like we're ready to go. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. On to item 8, these are items that require a separate vote. Item 8A has already been deferred until July 17th. Item 8B is a public hearing. This item would close a loophole in our new residential code. Anyone here wishing to speak under item 8B? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8C is a public hearing regarding dilapidated structures. Is there anyone here wishing to speak under any item listed under 8C? All right, how about a motion? Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. And on item 8D is a public hearing regarding unsecured structures. Is there anyone here wishing to speak under any item listed under 8D? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. We're on to item 8E. This is also a public hearing, and I think Doug Dowler's here, our budget director, to lead us through a program.
Doug's just going to take a minute and go over the 4 or 5 specific items in the budget amendment.
Good morning. The budget amendment before you today is the 4th one we brought this year. There are adjustments to the budget for unforeseen circumstances. In each of these cases, we have sufficient funds available to cover the expenses, but we don't have budget authority to spend that money, and that's what we're seeking now today is the budget authority to enact these changes. So the first change is in the Capital Improvement Fund, and we're asking for budget authority to allow $1.5 million in additional IT project. The funds would come from the Information Technology Internal Service Fund, would be used for projects such as network infrastructure, security upgrades, and the fiber optic connection to the Police and Fire Training Center. Also in the Capital Improvements Fund, we're adding $500,000 in fund balance to replenish the contingency account in the fund. The contingency account has been used for projects at the Bricktown Ballpark, back of the house improvements at the Cox Center and Chesapeake Arena, equipment for public works and other projects. Most of these projects have involved reimbursement from the general fund or from SMG or other entities, but those projects used up the budget authority in the Capital Improvements Fund. And at this point, we're down to $31,000 in our contingency account. We were just concerned as we get towards the end of the year here, if there was a significant expense, we wouldn't have the budget authority to take care of that as we finished out the year. The debt service fund is being amended to take into account the GO bond refunding that was executed earlier this year. With the refunding, we will save over $10 million over the life of the bonds that were refunded, but there was an expense in the current year to pay off some of the refunded bonds now, and so again, additional budget authority was needed to allow that payment. We've got 2 changes in the internal service funds. The first change is one I've already touched on. That's the transfer from the IT fund to CIP for $1.5 million for IT capital improvements. In the fleet services fund, the budget's being increased by $141,000 to account for higher fuel and some parts expenses. The fuel budget for FY12 anticipated a price per gallon for unleaded gas of $3.04 per gallon. The city doesn't have to pay taxes on our fuel, so obviously the cost is significantly lower than what you or I would pay at the pump. This increase takes our average price per gallon up to about $3.12 a gallon. So originally we were below our $3.04 per gallon budget in the first half of the year. Prices have been rising. Our fleet services folks think that this increase will be enough to carry us through the end of the year. Just as a point of reference, for next fiscal year, we're budgeting $3.17 a gallon. Again, that's without the taxes included in that price. The medical service program is being amended as a precaution to ensure the Western Division of IMSA does not end the year in a deficit situation. IMSA provides us monthly financial projections, and the latest projections show a surplus of about $100,000 at year end. We're seeking the extra budget authority now in case there should be some unforeseen revenue issues in the next few months that would result in a deficit situation in the Western Division. There have been times when Medicare or other major insurance company payments have been delayed due to factors beyond IMSA's control. And in case something like that occurs, we're asking for budget authority to keep the Western Division in the black. If things go as expected, we would not transfer any extra funds. And finally, the Water and Wastewater Utility Fund is being amended for several cost increases related to the drought last year and to refilling Lake Draper after the Atoka pipeline was shut down. Higher electricity costs for pumping water from Lake Atoka at $1 million, and $1.5 million is being added for chemicals at the water treatment plants due to the increased pumping and higher chemical prices. So with these changes, the new total for the city budget would be $946.7 million for FY12. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have on the amendment.
Say 947?
Yeah, just under 947.
Okay. Comments or questions for Doug? All right. Thank you. We're voting on item 8E. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this item? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8F is a request for a revocable right-of-way permit to hold Kathy's Market on the Paseo. Kathy Jacobson is here. You want to come forward and talk about your project? Good morning, Kathy. We'll need your name and address for the record.
My name is Kathleen Jacobson, and I reside at 216 Northwest 16th Street in Oklahoma City. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the City Council for their support, and a very special thanks to Stuart Chai, who spent many hours working on my revocable permit application. Also to Mark Hatcher and John Robinson for helping me with my street closure to ensure the safety of the public. We'll have over 100 vendors, artists and craftsmen this year at the market, which will be held May the 26th through the 28th, and we assure you that we'll have something for every member of the family. Do you have any questions?
I'm confused. I was very pleased. I thought that we had everything kind of worked out. I guess it did, but now I'm seeing this lease agreement just in the last couple of days, and I'm confused by that, I guess. Did someone purchase the vacant lot on 28th and Dewey?
Yes, Karen Orr, under ROK Investments, which I was not aware of, and so she offered an agreement that I would lease the lot from her and put the electricity in her name, and that I would not be able to have any vendors on the Paseo Street, which I already planned on having my food court and some of my fine artists there. So I'm moving, in the process right now of moving all of those vendors into my other lots, and they've all agreed to be moved. That way I can go ahead with my plans.
So will you be utilizing the vacant lot on 28th and Dewey?
And I will be using the grassy lot for my trailers, and then my parking lot will hold all of them and still have plenty of room in between for emergency access.
Okay, are you leasing this lot from ROK or Karen Orr?
No.
No, so that won't be involved. So that's not part of the, isn't that part of the revocable permit?
The lot isn't. The lot is on private
the
property.
street, you're talking about North Dewey Avenue, where it abuts that lot at the northwest corner of 28th and Dewey. Is that part, you know?
Eric Winger, the Director of Public Works. We received some information on Friday as well regarding the proposed lease arrangement. Obviously, the Paseo Arts Festival's revocable has already been granted, and so this is the additional information that's for your consideration today. We've researched, and with the revocable that's being proposed today, it's for the streets. So I think if we look at it from previous approvals, it is street right-of-way that's proposed for use, and I think that the arrangements have been made to relocate any of the items, and I think at this point we're understanding that all is in agreement. But if there's a protest that I'm not aware of, I mean, that's something that we can hear and follow up on, but I'm not aware of that.
If North Dewey at that point where it abuts Karen Orr's land is included in the revocable, you go ahead and approve the revocable for that, you're potentially setting it up for Kathy to be sued by Karen Orr to keep her from using that.
Right.
Because Karen Orr, by owning the lot abutting that street, owns to the center of the street subject to our right-of-way. Our right-of-way is for street purposes. We don't have a park right-of-way there. So all we're doing is saying we don't object to the use of the street, but the abutting owner owns to the center of the street. So if you use North Dewey abutting her property, she can potentially sue you and get an injunction to keep you from using it. So you're better off not including that.
Can we include my side of the street? Because we have to get the
Yes,
cars up to the
Yes.
apartments.
Your side of the street would be the east side. Yes, absolutely. You can include that because you own the island, yes.
Right.
So I would exclude the west side of North Dewey where it abuts the lots owned by Ms. Orr.
Do we do that through an amendment, or how do we?
We could easily amend the revocable with your recommendation today.
Yes, just say you make a motion to amend it to delete the west half of North Dewey where it abuts that particular lot.
Okay.
And staff will then make that amendment.
You want to say something?
What was the status of the lot prior to the purchase? Someone else owned that, and Kathy was leasing that from the other owner in prior years. A different owner.
It's always been my understanding on revocables that if in fact the new owner of this lot had protested or brought forward that she didn't agree to it, we couldn't include that in the revocable anyway.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And if we grant it and she comes up later, she has a right for whatever at that point in time.
Right.
So by excluding it, we're taking that owner, that property owner out of the loop on the revocable period, and she has no cause left at this time.
Right.
All right. Ed, you want to make the motion with that amendment?
I do.
Okay. Second? Second. All right. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Thank you. 8F2 is a revocable permit to hold the 2012 Autism Peace Walk 5K. It's in Ward 6 and 7. Is there anyone here representing this event? All right, I'll turn to the council people then for that area. Sounds like they're going for it. We have a motion. Do we have a second? All right, cast your votes on 8F2. Passed unanimously. Item 8F3 is for the McNelly's Pub Run 2012. Is there anyone here wishing to speak on this item? Good morning.
Thanks for your time and all you do for us. I'm from McNally's, Joe Wolf, 333 Northwest 5th. Sorry about that. Apartment 2012. I'm representing McNally's. Those from Rick already couldn't be here this morning. I apologize about that. This pub run we did last year went off really good. Our first year we had 650 runners. I'm not sure if you know, but it's a fundraiser for the Chad Perry Fund. So we get a lot of support from lobsters and people that help us. The unique thing about this is it's not a closed course, it's a rolling course that goes through the Heritage Hills and Meston Park area, so we really don't hinder anybody living in that area. A week before, myself and some of my staff also go through and put flyers on all the doors on the run, not only encourage them to come out and support the run, the signs, but let them know what we'd be doing during that time. I don't believe that we had any negative feedback. I think it was a really positive event. It's open for all ages, and we hope to have a bigger crowd, raise more money for them this year.
All right, and that's May 19th.
May 19th, sir.
It's in Ward 6, Meg?
It is, yes.
All right. All right, cast your votes on item 8F3. Passed unanimously. Good luck.
Thank you all.
Item 8G, I understand we do not need executive session?
That's correct.
Okay, how about a motion? Okay, cast your votes. Item is struck. Item 8H, claims recommended for denial. Is there anyone here wishing to speak under any item listed under 8H? All right, how about a motion then? Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. We're on to items from council. Pat, you want to get us started this morning? All right, Skip.
Mayor, I was wanting to on the issue of the cell towers that was passed to July the 17th, have we finalized the contract with a consultant as it relates to the issue of the cell towers?
What we've done is we've hired a consultant to work on that specific one, and then we're going through a selection process to have a more formal selection process to get a more permanent consultant on board. And so we do have a consultant that's been tasked to work on that specific project, and he's working on that at this time.
Okay.
But we're also then going for a more formal process to get one that will be standby consultant just to have on hand for the city.
So the staff report that's part of this report will basically be null and void?
Well, I don't know if it'll be null and void. I would say it will be supplemented.
This is a planning staff report, and so you'll have an additional report from the consultant.
Okay.
Bob, you want to add anything to that?
We're meeting with the consultant that we've hired that's working on that case at Coles Garden, but the RFP, those come in on the 15th of May, and we'll have a more formal process at that time. But they've prepared a draft report, but they've asked for additional information from the applicant, so you'll get a new report attached to your Planning Commission report for that meeting.
Before this case, we do have a consultant on board who is working on an independent evaluation of it.
Right.
And they're working with staff at this point in time.
So did he prepare a report because initially this was for the 16th?
Right, they prepared a report, but we requested some additional information from the applicant, and they've agreed to provide that, so we didn't give you that report because that report's going to change before the July meeting. So we're meeting with them, I think it's tomorrow. We'll finalize what that report's going to look like, and then we'll get it to you prior, so you'll have enough time to look at it before that meeting.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Great, thank you. Just for anyone that didn't have an opportunity to see the ribbon cutting yesterday for the Oklahoma City Skydance Bridge, I just wanted to remind everyone that it is now lit. I had the opportunity to see it last night. It's just spectacular, and want to encourage everyone to go down and take a look at it. We had a great event yesterday with the Capitol Hill Dance Troupe and their drum ensemble that were just fantastic to lead us across the bridge. And I wanted to offer my congratulations to Hans Bootzer, Stan Carroll, and the team that put it together. Thank the city staff for all the work they did on it, and also recognize ODOT, who was our partner in that effort. It's a major, wonderful icon for our city that I think will be enjoyed by all. So thank you very much.
Yes, Your Honor. Friday, I had the opportunity to attend a tour of the city of Fort Worth with the Urban Land Institute, and it was a very informative type of a presentation that we went through. Fort Worth is about, several years ahead of us on projects that we are currently facing. They relocated Interstate 30 and used the old interstate, made that into a boulevard like we're doing with Interstate 40. They are working with the Trinity Riverfront development, just like we're trying to develop our Oklahoma River. They have issues with respect to continued development and expansion of downtown Fort Worth, and have been very successful. Just to give you an idea of how successful they are, when everybody else was incurring difficulties during the last recession, they didn't even experience a bump in the road. They've never gotten below 90% occupancy for residential, for retail, or for office space downtown, and that includes 40 blocks of downtown in Fort Worth. They have really figured out, I think, how to take that city to the next level, and are very successful with that. And then beyond just the downtown area, they have what they refer to as urban villages. The area that we toured was the medical district, similar to ours, and they're focusing on having mixed-use development. A great example is Magnolia Boulevard, which at one time was a 5-lane boulevard. They've shrunk it down to 2 lanes, no congestion. It's a much more pedestrian, bicyclist-friendly area. The retail is just flourishing, or commercial development in general. There's physician offices and other commercial development. But that place has really taken off. The older neighborhoods, which we would have thought should have been abandoned, maybe even torn down, are just seeing life brought back to it. My point is, I just think our council would benefit from having an opportunity, and the individuals down there at the city of Fort Worth have expressed willingness and actually eagerness to come up here and share their story with us. For me, I wouldn't have believed it without seeing it firsthand, and I think we can accomplish the same things that they have. And in light of that, if you go back to the 1940s, I believe the city of Oklahoma City was similar in size to the city of Dallas, and there's quite a difference these days. I think the same thing may happen with Fort Worth. Now, I'm not advocating us growing to the size of Dallas, but Fort Worth has demonstrated they have figured out how to take a city and make it a very comfortable, enjoyable city to live in and work in and grow in, and they've done it in just a very nice manner. So I was going to suggest that we consider having a workshop and allowing their assistant city manager and the other individuals in charge of the various aspects of what's going on down in Fort Worth come up here and share their ideas. I think if you saw the before and after photographs, heard their story, we could say the same thing, that yeah, we can accomplish those same objectives and do it in a very enjoyable, beneficial manner that everybody benefits. You know, one thing that struck me is they've had investments of over $1 billion, I think, go into their downtown area. And they've been able to partner. A private-public partnership has developed, and that's allowed them to be so successful. And they've gotten beyond the concerns that, well, who's benefiting from this? Because the bottom line is the citizens of Fort Worth are benefiting from it. They're adding $26 million of additional annual real estate taxes, because in Texas, you know, their cities are funded more so by real estate taxes and less by sales tax as a result of all this development activity. So it's the citizens of Fort Worth who are benefiting from these efforts. They're now at the point where visiting teams who want to play the Dallas Cowboys in football want to stay in Fort Worth. That's their location of preference. But the Omni Hotel down there is very restrictive. They are so busy, they'll only let certain teams stay there. They can pick and choose what they want to have as far as activities, and it's just a great success story in my opinion. So I think we would all benefit from the opportunity of listening to what they've done, how they've approached it, and how we can take those same examples and use them up here in Oklahoma City. So I do hope we can consider having a workshop, or at least carve out a good amount of time, maybe a couple hours at one of our council meetings. And there's other people who attended that trip who are much better qualified to explain what we saw and what they're doing than I am. And so hopefully, if nothing else, we'll get some of the other attendees to come down here and speak. A couple other items, if I may. The next one's a little bit of a negative issue, but I was noticing that we're having the National Drag Boat Race on the Oklahoma River in June, and it's sponsored by a casino. And I was going to see if the city attorney could look into the issue of whether or not we have any authority to limit the type of sponsors to certain events that take place on Oklahoma City owned property. Again, I just don't think we should help promote casinos, and we may not be able to restrict those types of activities or events, and I understand if that's the case, but maybe in the future we could include that kind of language in any future type of lease agreements to where we could control who would be the sponsor on some of these events. I still think we don't need the money that bad. I know one of the big proponents of these types of events is the economic impact it has on the city, but my opinion is we don't need the money that bad to help promote those types of activities. And then finally, I would ask that we look at possibly making Western Avenue, as it approaches I-40, the right-hand lane, a right-hand turn lane only, because you'll see traffic back up as far north as Reno Avenue as the traffic is trying to get to I-40 from Western Avenue, and maybe if we restricted as it approached closer to I-40, making the right-hand lane a right-hand turn lane only, it would help minimize the traffic congestion that takes place on Western Avenue. Thank you, Your Honor.
Is it not right lane only now?
No, sir. Not? No, sir.
And you're going south on Western?
Yes, to I-40 from downtown. And it's just a very heavily used access road to get onto I-40. I-40 is great. I mean, I'm so pleased with it. But there's still a few things that could be done to improve, I think, that area.
Yes, a couple of things, Mayor. One, I would like to thank Governor Fallon for the dinner last night. The governor hosted the councils of Oklahoma City and of Tulsa, a joint dinner. It was just really a good event. Wasn't political, just to get to know each other and share in a very informal setting, and I appreciate very much her efforts to do that. Those are the kinds of things that I think are bode well for the future of what happens between the two cities. We talked a lot about competition and comparison between the two cities, but I think understanding and getting to know each other on that level is really important. I thought that was very, very well done last night, and I personally appreciate so much her reaching out to both communities and hosting us at the same time. That was just a really nice event. Second, I appreciate the Bicentennial Monument report.
We'll have a presentation on that in a minute. We'll have a presentation on that in a minute.
Okay. Well, I'll save my questions then for that. But one other thing I'd like to comment on, I would like to see us take a little bit more aggressive attitude toward things like this. I could be wrong, but I have a feeling that this would not have happened had not voices from this council urged about what was going to happen to all that. I think that this is more of an afterthought than it is a design, and I'd like to see us put this on the front burner rather than waiting until people are complaining about what are we going to do about this, what are we going to do about that. I'd like to see that talked about on the front end. There are monuments. There is one significant monument to Stanley Draper Sr. on near the old fire station there, just south of the old I-40, that probably ought to be moved. It could be incorporated perhaps into the boulevard, but I'd like to see some conversation about that before somebody's there with a wrecking ball and tearing it down, and then we're wondering what happened to it. Also, what's going on with COTPA's re-engineering or redo of the parking garage over there. That Ford Park is full of architectural antiques that I've been talking about for the last 4 or 5 years, trying to figure out something to do with it, and in the meantime they've deteriorated even more, and they are really some of the very last remnants of what downtown used to look like. Some really nice amenities that were part of downtown. It's kind of hard to almost visualize that now when you look at how far it's been permitted to deteriorate. But it's not too late to salvage what's there. It's not too late to hire somebody to reconstruct those. It would seem to me that some of the funding that's in the 1% for the arts money could be used to rehabilitate those for some of these projects that are going downtown. And I think it'd be nice to try to salvage some of those before it's too late. But I'd like to see that part of a more coordinated effort as opposed to a reaction, which I believe this, and I appreciate it being here, this report on the monuments, but I believe it's more reactionary than it is planning, and I'd like to see us on the front side of that stuff instead of on the back side. Okay. One more thing. Chief Bryant hosted, and I hosted a wildfire meeting in my ward last week. Very, very well done. Given the almost, very regular lack of attendance at events other than efforts to lynch the councilman over zoning cases, it was about as well attended as any event like that I've seen. And fire did an excellent job, a great presentation. Chief did a good job. Had a long question and answer session at the end of it, which I think was very valuable. And I think I just was very impressed with the way it came off. And I appreciate the fire department for putting that on.
Larry?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just one quick thing. A number of the neighborhoods around our city are participating in the Keep Oklahoma City Beautiful campaign that we go through, litter blitzes. This particular Saturday, the Windsor Hills Neighborhood Association has got a event scheduled for 10 a.m. at the corner of Northwest 30th and Meridian Avenue to do some cleanup work along North Meridian. And I'd like to encourage the neighbors to meet us out there for that. And also, if your neighborhood is doing anything, to participate together. As you drive around town, you see evidences of litter, and we can't pick it all up. What needs to happen is to get ahead of the curve. Pete was talking earlier on historical monuments. We need to be more careful as citizens of what we throw out in our parks. It's a never-ending task. And I hope we never have to get to what they do in Singapore. Singapore doesn't have any litter, because if you litter in Singapore, they come out and cane you, and you don't throw anything away. We're a free democracy. We need to be more responsible than that, and I just encourage our neighbors to do that. Thank you, Your Honor.
You aren't promoting caning, though, are you, Larry? Okay, just want to be clear. Ed?
I want to second David's comments on casinos. I know as an accountant, he's seeing some effects of gambling addiction, and I second his call for that. I also second Pete's comments on the meeting with the Tulsa City Council last night. I thought it was just very helpful and very informative. Jim, I didn't understand that just as we haven't had a comprehensive plan for 32 years and we're starting the 18-month process of developing a comprehensive plan, Tulsa has just come to the end of their 2-year process of developing a comprehensive plan. So if we could get a copy of that comprehensive plan, if we could get some of the key players that were involved in that process to come. We're meeting at the zoo once a month for 18 months. If we could hear from them at the outset, what was their stumbling blocks? How did they resolve them? How did they come to the conclusions they came to? I think that it's now being tested. Maybe there's a conflict with Quick Trip or something. Now the comprehensive plan, so we can watch what happens to them over the next 2 years as we develop ours. Another area of cooperation, I think, just naturally is going to be IMSA. There was a good discussion last night. I know there's a very important board meeting tomorrow. The mayor of Tulsa, Bartlett, is going to be there. I think there's consensus that we want to do some auditing. The Tulsa City Council last week passed a resolution unanimously asking for an audit. I think the mayor of Tulsa is going to speak to that tomorrow, requesting that. Pat, I think, when we were talking to the mayor, had the best idea. About every 6 to 9 months, Pat has an idea that I really like. But he reminded me of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. And I think that's really the key. That was in 2002. Congress passed 423-3 and 99-1 after the Enron and WorldCom scandals. And it basically, if you have a board that's aggressively setting auditing and disclosure requirements, and I think that's the key, that it set new and enhanced standards for all U.S. public company boards. It talks about disclosure of conflicts of interest, how you do the specific processes and procedures for compliance audits, specific limits on the behavior of corporate officers, and regulates financial transactions, including stock transactions, the financial transactions of corporate officers. I think if you have an aggressive board that implements the policies of Sarbanes-Oxley, I think everything's going to be all right. I think the mayor is going to make some new appointments to the board who also subscribes to that philosophy, and I think we'll do well. One thing that's going to come up tomorrow, I know that Fire and IT will be attending a portion of that meeting, and this will require a policy statement from our council, is what is our policy on fire responding to level 3 calls? We are trying to update the CAD to CAD interface so that our fire can see in real time what IMSA is seeing, what the dispatchers are entering. The purpose being that, one of the purposes being that fire would then be able to drop off automatically dispatching to level 3 calls if so inclined, as a policy statement from this body. In anticipation of that, they've already negotiated a medical priority dispatch response protocols between fire and IMSA, and then the medical director signed off on it. So there's exceptions of when fire might go ahead and still go out on a level 3 call. If the CAD to CAD interface, they're having some technical difficulties, if that gets solved imminently, then that would require, I think, a policy statement from this council very quickly as to are we what is our policy? My personal feeling is that fire should not be going out automatically on every level 3 non-priority call. If CAD-to-CAD interface is going to take a year or there's some fatal flaw, then we'll have to decide as a policy where we go with that. Returning to Sarbanes-Oxley, just my final comment. I have substantial fear about some of the implications for Ward 2 and the city, about some of the things we've heard about with Chesapeake over the last week. I would say that although technically the Chesapeake lawyers would argue that what has transpired, what we're hearing about in the news is legal, it doesn't, there's near unanimous condemnation from analysts and investors that even though it may be technically legal, it violates the spirits of things like Sarbanes-Oxley. If back in 2002 we were talking about if you were using interests in oil wells instead of stock transactions, it would have been included in Sarbanes-Oxley. So it's a technicality. There's only one publicly traded energy company that allows something like the Founder Well Participation Program, and that's Chesapeake. And I think it's a technicality. It certainly violates the spirit of Sarbanes-Oxley and other SEC regulations, and it's causing fear. I mean, ultimately, stocks are pressures on stocks are not just economic realities, but perception is reality. And when we saw $600 million drop on Thursday, that's fear, and sometimes fear rules. I think that the price of natural gas is going to stay low for the foreseeable future. Others have not joined Chesapeake's call to decrease production to try and increase rates. I think Exxon and others are just full steam ahead. I think Exxon, which is the largest producer of natural gas, would like nothing more than to see the second largest producer of natural gas have trouble. I would say that we're all in this together. We all need Chesapeake to do well, both for the city and particularly Ward 2. In the spirit of Sarbanes-Oxley, I would just hope that that requests such as came last month before all this erupted from the New York comptroller. They asked, can we have large long-term investors in Chesapeake be on the board? And I would certainly hope that because there's a perception that this board might not be acting consistent with the spirit of some of these acts, that other members of the board would be added. I think that some of the financial difficulties, some of the implications of the future need to be a consideration when we're thinking about zoning and planning. About 10 days ago before the Planning Commission, Chesapeake came before the Planning Commission, dumped a stack of documents the afternoon before the meeting about a proposed development on 50th and Western. This is going to be a large development designed by Rand Elliott. One planning commissioner described it as space age. This is a historic neighborhood. There are implications with our comprehensive plan about developments and how they interact with historic neighborhoods. Basically, Chesapeake was asking for kind of a carte blanche, just blank zoning that would allow kind of whatever retail. It had 10 bays originally. Now they may have scaled back, but 10 gas bays on 50th and Western next to a historic neighborhood. It could have whatever retail they decided. Whatever happens in Chesapeake, that zoning is permanent. And I just think that we need to consider that there may be, if heaven forbid something were to happen in terms of a takeover or insolvency, this zoning is permanent. And there's just, the Planning Commission has said, you can't dump documents on us the night before. And there was almost an attitude of, well, we'll take a denial at the Planning Commission and then we'll go to council. I would hope that we would respect the Planning Commission, do things the way the Planning Commission has asked. We've allowed an unprecedented amount of tearing buildings down and development in that area without a comprehensive plan. And I would ask that it would stop, and that we would really consider that the chances of Chesapeake folding are not zero and maybe increasing, and that we need to think about the zoning, and that this is not just a Chesapeake issue, but this is a Ward 2 issue. Thanks.
Gary?
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things as we go around the horseshoe. On IMSA and the priority dispatching, we talked about during the window of opportunity creating a plan or a report on consolidating IMSA and fire dispatch. And I'd like to know if that's being worked on, Jim. In fact, I'd like to see a plan in place of what city staff would recommend in a consolidated dispatch system over there. One thing that's coming up is IMSA will shortly be considering its contract for its provider. One of the items in that contract is that the provider, which is Paramedics Plus currently, provides the dispatchers for IMSA. Paramedics Plus will tell you they consider that a key component of their compliance, because having the dispatchers tied to the provider for the transport system make sure that their compliance is done in a proper manner and that they keep their response time standards down. So I think they'll have great concern about not being able to control the dispatch system over there. But my question is, have we reached a point in time where we're willing to take that risk and consolidate that system over there? And I'd like to get a report done on that. A second thing on fire runs, and I agree that fire not running on all the calls they're running on now is a key component to our future system. But one of the items that everybody complains about but nobody wants to do anything about, seems like, is the number of calls that we're making to nursing homes and assisted living centers to do nothing more than put people back in bed. In my opinion, it's because the homes, the centers will not staff to the level that they need to be staffing at, and they don't staff to the level of experience or certification, whatever it takes to do what they're being paid to do. I know that the system, the fire and IMSA system will tell you that the owners and the operators of these homes have learned what keywords to say when they call in so that there's no way we can not respond. They'll say, well, they may have had a heart attack, when they know that it was simply nothing more than they just either fell out of bed or they fell and the staff is not able to get them back up or something. I'd like a study and a report done, Jim, on not only what recommendations could be done on ordinance changes here, but what other cities might be doing to deal with this issue, because I know Pete's talked about the home across from his office. I can tell you that the stations out in my area running to the retirement homes out there on Council is just a continuous thing. So I think if we're going to really deal with issues in the emergency medical response system, we need to see if we can't deal with that issue also. I think it's a key component to it.
So you're talking about seeing if we can set standards for staffing?
No, I'm just saying that we need to,
maybe.
That's more of a medical issue. That's more of a health department issue. What I'm talking about is identifying an ordinance that says that if that's simply the reason they called, then maybe we need a way to start billing them for that.
I see.
Because if we're going to be the heavy lifter, the load lifter for these homes and assisted living centers, then we need to be compensated for it, because we're spending a lot of money on an emergency medical system when it really wasn't a medical emergency that got them there. It was something else. And the fact that they've learned the keywords to say when they call in We just got to find a way to get around that system. We just got to find a way to fix that system, not get around it. And that's what I'd like to see studied, because I think it's an integral part. In a city our size, with the number of care centers that we have, and our elderly population is growing all the time, I think we need to get on top of how we fix the system where we're nothing more than the staff for these centers, because they won't do it. So, but
do you think would EMSA or fire have readily accessible data? Because I agree with you. It's they know how, they say shortness of breath or chest pain, or would we be able to identify where we're going to repeatedly, frequent flyers or whatever you want to call it, but places that maybe have abused? I mean, is there data we can study?
Well, I think it's going to take a system to where if you identify a facility that you think is continuing abusing the system, then you need to find a way to do some kind of an investigation in that facility and find some way of determining when they are abusing the system, and then deal with those facilities. That's what I want us to do. A blanket charge for every run is not going to work, because there is going to be times that they had a true medical emergency, and that's what we're there for. Yeah. But there's a significant number of times when they don't have a medical emergency, and they know that. So, and I don't know. You may come up to me after studying this and say, there's just no way to fix this. I don't know, but I can't help but think that there's some way to do it. So,
but in return, would anybody not respond to a call if the study in reference to the nursing homes?
I think he was looking more on the lines of billing people for abuse, not necessarily not responding. Is that
right? Right.
Billing.
If you've got a patient in an assisted living center or a nursing home who simply has either fallen out of bed or they've fallen while they were walking to the bathroom or whatever it may be, in my opinion, that the people are paying that home to have the staff capable of getting that person back up and either getting them back in bed or taking care of it. That's not a medical emergency. But yet, when they don't staff to the level or they don't want to deal with it, they simply call up and they say, well, we've got a person that's fallen and we think it might have been a heart attack. Well, that's going to kick us in, and we're going to run over there when they simply need nothing more than being put back up into bed.
Yeah, well, I agree with you to some extent, Councilman Mars, but I think that the real issue is the legislature in reference to passing some laws that make some real professional requirements in reference to those individuals who are working at some of these nursing homes. Because I think what happens is a lot of times you have some very, and I hate to say untrained, but they have minimal training, and they don't want a lawsuit on their head. Right. And so what they do, they take the next best way out, and that is, call someone from EMSA or fire. And I mean, I'm aware of several situations exactly like that. And but unfortunately, you have a lot of these nursing homes who, and I don't, think it's obvious if you read in the paper just here last week some of the people that they're staffing in some of these facilities that obviously are not there to do the best quality of service for the individuals that are residents. But yeah, I think we'd be a lot better off if we had a legislature that would address some of those issues from the actual credentials that they need to must have in order to be hired.
Mayor, I think Gary's right, though. There has to be a way for that to be, because you look almost every small town in Oklahoma has a nursing home, and I guarantee you, in Cement and Colgate and places like that, the fire department is not responding like they do here. I agree. I think we're being taken advantage of, and I think we ought to find a way to put a stop to it. It's costing our taxpayers money, and I think we ought to find a way to put a stop to it.
Chief, what, in Tulsa, is fire going on these?
I'm not sure about what their response protocols are for that. It's a little bit different because, as you mentioned, the CAD-to-CAD interface, their system up in Tulsa, fire doesn't automatically respond until they get word about the level of the priority from IMSA. So they're already at that state that we're working toward getting at. But as far as your question on the data, that's absolutely obtainable. We can go back over our records and our incident reporting system and pull out, again, and our firefighters know the center or the facilities that they go to on a frequent basis. So, and again, some of them more than others, obviously. But
would you be able to identify where a word like shortness of breath or angina was used and then it didn't turn out to be?
Yes. Yeah, we put those types of remarks and information into the incident report once they come off of that call. So we know that, again, maybe the nature of the call was this, and when we got there, there was some other condition altogether. So that's we can get that data, and that's not a problem as far as collecting that. But it happens on a frequent basis, obviously.
And I knew from the beginning when I started thinking about how to bring this up that part of the solution's got to be at the state level, because we don't deal with training or certification or qualifications needed for whatever level of assisted care you're providing. That is going to be a state issue. But we need to start identifying some way of dealing with what we have right now. And hopefully we can get the legislative committee to start dealing with those certifications and so forth. But when you talk about something on a statewide level, when it comes to health, that's not an easy thing to change. But we got to start somewhere, I believe. So that was my comment.
Right. But the medical priority dispatch protocols that you mentioned earlier, once that interface is in place, that will right there eliminate a lot of these that we're discussing here today. And those protocols have already been loaded into IMSA's CAD system. But as you mentioned, because that interface is not in place yet, we don't get that information in a timely fashion right now. So just that component, the interface, will eliminate a lot of what we're talking about here today. But I think it still bears out that you're somewhat at the mercy of the information you receive from that caller on the 911 system.
Chief,
It always will be to some extent.
What is the timing on that interface being operable, do you think?
Well, I mean, just to be very, very clear right now, it's not an issue with city's IT, it's not an issue with IMSA, it is absolutely an issue with the vendor, and they're having some difficulty. Edmund they went to the same interface here a couple of months ago. They're experiencing some issues as well that they're having to work through. And so I think that we have kind of ratcheted up the concern and the heat, if you will, to the vendor to try and get this worked out and get it going more quickly.
So I do understand that Edmunds had some positive results and been able to reduce some of the overlapping calls.
Yes, they've already seen a reduction in the amount of total call volume for the fire department. Again, a lot of their issues, there are some issues with that system itself, the software and so forth, and some issues, honestly, from what's being reported to me, are somewhat on the human error side. So, again, they're working through that, and we're staying in contact with them so we have an idea of what we might be experiencing too. But I think we're making every effort to try and get the vendor to be a little bit more responsive and get this system online.
Thank you.
All right, Gary, thank you for bringing that to our attention.
I have one final thing, Mayor, real quick.
Okay.
Not for you. Just to comment on David and Ed's statements on the casinos and the sponsorships and so forth. I understand that concern, and I don't know that I necessarily disagree with it, but there are a number of fundraisers and a number of events that rely on sponsorships from those groups here in the city, and I would hate to take a position to where those groups can't use city property for those simply because they've got that as a sponsor. It seems a little hypocritical when we, the city, benefits from a leasehold out there from one of the casinos in town. So if we're benefiting from it, it seems a little hypocritical to say other people can't benefit from it. Now, again, I'll go back and say I understand the concern on that, but I think we want to be real careful when we head down that road.
Okay. City manager reports?
Wendell Wisenhunt is here this morning to talk a little bit about the item that Councilman White brought up regarding Bicentennial Park. There was a city manager report, 3 or 4 weeks ago that outlined a action plan on how we were going to deal with the monuments, and we're executing that action plan and have some results today, and Wendell's here to update us on that.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Since the city manager report that you received on the 20th of March, there have been significant things happen, and we wanted to brief you on those things this morning. We have done so in the staff report, the city manager's report, but we'd like to give you a little more information. As you know, the contract has now been issued. The work has begun on the park construction. The monuments and art have been removed and are stored. And we have been about the business of taking recommendations from citizens and recommending groups, recommending bodies on where and how the monuments and art should be placed. The ASLA, the Society of Landscape Architects, had offered to coordinate a charrette on the placement of these pieces, and we were very interested in them doing that and accepted that offer right away. And a charrette was held on the 24th of March, a Saturday, and it was very enjoyable. We had a good attendance. We had 20 landscape architects there, several students, 3 members of the Oklahoma City Art Commission, as well as numerous city staff from both my department as well as the Public Works Department. The recommendations, which I'm going to be going over with you today from that charrette, have been presented to the Oklahoma City Art Commission, and they have recommended those, and we want to share those with you today. The groupings of the pieces at Bicentennial really group into 3 different areas. First would be the Bicentennial monuments themselves. Second would be the monuments associated with the 3 statues. And third would be various and sundry plaques and monuments that may not be related to each other. We'll talk about each of those areas. The recommendation of the charrette and the recommendation of that charrette having been accepted by the Art Commission is that the Bicentennial monuments and all things associated with those monuments should be worked into the design and should remain at Bicentennial Park. I will mention that, if you'll all remember, Mr. Woods came before you some time ago to speak about his concern that the monuments might be moved. I have spoken with him personally about the recommendations of the charrette and the acceptance of the recommendations by the Art Commission that the monuments stay there, and he was pleased about that. The other grouping of monuments are the statues. Of course, the statues are Wally Post, Stanley Draper, and General Thomas P. Stafford. The Stanley Draper statue has been recommended to be placed on the City Hall lawn, west side of the building. The charrette and the members of the Art Commission felt that having the Stanley Draper monument at the seat of government would be very appropriate. So they've recommended the lawn on the west side of City Hall. I'll mention to you today as well, while it's not part of my presentation, the monument that Mr. White mentioned a few moments ago at the traffic circle near Old I-40. Mr. Clowers has been speaking with the Draper family about that. It is being dealt with. And there's also been discussions with the Draper family about the movement of the statue of Stanley Draper from Bicentennial to the west side of City Hall. The General Stafford's statue is proposed to be placed at Stars and Stripes Park in North Oklahoma City on Lake Hefner. I'm sure you're all probably familiar with Stars and Stripes Park, but it is our patriotic park. There are monuments there already to General President Eisenhower. There's a large flag plaza. It is our park of celebrating our country and our nation. As time would have it, we've also just finished a new playground there. Some of you will remember that years past there was a large playground with a very tall rocket ship. That rocket ship had to be removed some time ago. We've replaced that one rocket ship with two rocket ships, and it is proposed that the General Stafford statue would be placed north of those rocket ship pieces. And I have spoken with General Stafford myself, very nice gentleman. He thought this was a good idea. He was pleased with it. The Wally Post statue. Wally Post Park on South Robinson, just on the south side of the river, has been named after the flyer for many, many years. Was named Wally Post originally, as far as we can detect. It has never had anything that we can find other than the entry sign that associates itself with Wally Post. The recommendation is that the Wally Post statue be placed on the south side of the river, where you see the noted area on your slide. And we have already done some proposed design work for a project that will take place 4 to 5 years from now when we make a major renovation of Wally Post Park. As you can see here, staff is anticipating having a hangar which may have the plane from Mr. Post, the Winnie Mae, flying from it and the statue placed in front of it. That's our long-term plan. So the recommendation is that the Wally Post statue would be placed at Wally Post Park. We know that we can't wait 5 years, 4 years to place the Wally Post statue in the long-term project, so we have come up with a place that we could do a temporary placement, and you see that depicted as well. That placement could happen very soon. The other grouping of monuments and plaques is, as you see, many which may be unrelated to each other or may be related to one of the statues. The recommendation is that where possible, these plaques remain in Bicentennial Park, and most can in one of the newly created beds. Some of the plaques are related very much to a statue and would continue to be at the base of the statue where placed. There is a potential, of course, that if you look at the upper right-hand corner, it refers to a mighty oak. If there was not an oak in Bicentennial Park and there was on the grounds of City Hall, it might make better display to have it near a real oak tree, so we're considering that along with the consultant as well. So you'll see on the next slide here a number of the plaques that do relate to, for instance, the Wally Post statue and would be at the base of the Wally Post statue. And the next slide continues with some of the pieces that are very directly related and some that are not related at all to other things in Bicentennial Park. It is our plan to continue working with the consultant and have him work these recommendations into the design and come back before you at an appropriate time after going through the appropriate committees within the city's system. We think that these recommendations will be well received, and I'd like to try to answer any questions that you have.
One comment.
Yes, sir.
A family member who went out to Stars and Stripes Park and said it was so full of people on a Saturday that there weren't near enough benches for people to sit down.
Okay.
Like it was 10 to 1, people sitting on the ground to people wishing they had benches. You might just look and see. I know we can't, you can't always program for peak times, but it might be worth looking at.
We have seen that since we finished the playground there and the renovation of that park, that it has increased the usage dramatically. We'll look at the benches. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
So when the park is completed, none of the statues will be in the Bicentennial Park.
That's the proposal, sir. One would be at Wiley Post, one would be at Stars and Stripes, and one would be on the west lawn of City Hall.
I guess my next question then is, will there ever be an opportunity to have a statue placed in the Bicentennial Park?
Of course, that would
I mean,
be...
is this being designed to the point where...
That would be up to council's decision and upon advice from the Parks Commission and the Arts Commission at a future time. I don't think anything's precluded.
Won't the statue of the maestro, the conductor, still be...
Yeah, it's still there.
Yes, sir.
That's not going to be moved anyplace else?
It is not.
Good, thank you.
Any discussions with the Court Shore Park Committee or thoughts about...
Thoughts about placing statues in Court Shore?
Right.
No, sir. Long-term, that could be done. We needed to come up with some areas where we could place the statues, the three, very quickly. And, they could be moved later if council decided to do so, but we felt we needed to find a way to move them now.
Councilman Greenwell had some comments a couple of weeks ago about the possibility of having some recognition plaques for various notable Oklahomans or Oklahoma Cityans, and that could be done in Bicentennial Park. It could be done in the new Court Shore Park. There are options out there available.
As long as we don't put them too close together and make it look like a cemetery, I think.
See, everybody's a critic.
Wendell, thanks.
Thank you very much.
All right. Anyone signed up for citizens to be heard? All right. We have no executive session today, so let's adjourn.
Didn't remind everybody the Arts Festival starts today, and everybody, it's going to be a great week, it looks like weather-wise, so everybody needs to come out.
What time should the council be there?
The opening ceremony is at 11, I believe, and
11?
And as soon as the ceremony's over with, we'll adjourn for the lunch.
11 o'clock for every council member that can make it. Thanks, Gary. We're adjourned.